Preparing for underwriting support and insurance operations, P&C and Life interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 15 key questions you're likely to face. For each one, you'll see what the interviewer is testing, the core concepts you should cover, and a sample answer. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. What does underwriting support do in an insurance operations team? The interviewer wants to assess whether you understand the operational bridge between producers, underwriters, policy administration, claims, billing, and compliance in both P&C and life insurance environments. While answering, focus on submission intake, document review, data entry, quote and bind support, policy issuance, renewal processing, service standards, and escalation of incomplete or unusual risks. Underwriting support keeps the underwriting process moving accurately and on time. I would handle submission intake, validate documents, enter risk details, order reports, prepare files, issue quotes or binders, and coordinate policy issuance. In P&C, that may involve loss runs, schedules, and property details. In life, it may involve applications, medical requirements, and beneficiary information. The value is clean data, complete files, faster turnaround, and fewer downstream errors. Question 2. How would you triage a new business submission when it first arrives? The interviewer is testing your understanding of intake discipline, prioritization, completeness checks, service level management, and how underwriting support reduces cycle time before an underwriter reviews the risk. Make sure to cover logging the submission, checking required documents, validating producer authority, identifying urgency, separating routine from complex cases, and communicating missing information quickly. I would first log the submission, confirm the producer or broker is authorized, and check whether the file is complete enough for review. For P&C, I would look for applications, loss runs, exposure details, schedules, and prior coverage. For life, I would check the application, disclosures, medical requirements, identity details, and premium information. Then I would prioritize by effective date, complexity, and service standard, while immediately requesting missing items. Question 3. What is the difference between underwriting and rating? This question evaluates whether you can distinguish risk selection judgment from pricing mechanics, and whether you understand how underwriting decisions interact with manuals, models, filed rates, and authority limits. In your answer, talk about risk acceptability, classification, pricing inputs, manual rates, credits or debits, regulatory constraints, and when support staff should escalate rating exceptions. Rating calculates the premium. Underwriting decides whether the risk should be accepted and on what terms. In P&C, rating may use class codes, territory, limits, deductibles, payroll, sales, or property values. In life, it may use age, gender, smoking status, face amount, and health class. Underwriting overlays judgment, exclusions, referrals, additional requirements, or declination. I would support both by entering accurate data and escalating anything outside authority or filed rules. Question 4. How do loss runs affect a P&C underwriting decision? The interviewer wants to assess your familiarity with claims history, loss frequency, severity, trend analysis, loss ratios, and how support teams prepare loss data for underwriter review. Be sure to mention claim counts, paid and reserved amounts, open versus closed claims, policy periods, loss descriptions, large losses, frequency patterns, and reconciliation to exposure. Loss runs show how a risk has actually performed, so they are critical in P&C underwriting. I would review claim frequency, severity, paid amounts, reserves, open claims, and whether losses are isolated or recurring. For example, one large weather loss is different from repeated slip and fall claims. I would also check that the experience period matches the submission and flag missing years. Clean loss information helps the underwriter price, restrict, or decline appropriately. Walk me through the difference between a quote, binder, policy, and endorsement. The interviewer is testing your command of core insurance documents and whether you understand the operational and legal significance of each document in the policy lifecycle. While answering, focus on the sequence from proposed terms to temporary evidence of coverage, formal contract issuance, and post-issuance changes that amend policy terms. A quote is an offer of proposed terms and premium, usually subject to conditions. A binder is temporary evidence of coverage once the carrier agrees to bind, often before the full policy is issued. The policy is the formal contract, including declarations, forms, limits, exclusions, and conditions. An endorsement changes the policy after issuance, such as adding a vehicle, changing an address, or modifying coverage. I would make sure each document matches approved underwriting terms. Question 6. What are the main underwriting considerations in life insurance versus P&C insurance? This question evaluates your ability to compare two insurance segments, including differences in risk drivers, data requirements, underwriting evidence, policy duration, and operational support workflows. Make sure to cover mortality and health risk for life, property, and liability exposures for P&C, different documentation needs, and different time horizons for risk assessment. Life underwriting is mainly about mortality risk, age, medical history, lifestyle, occupation, financial need, and insurable interest. P&C underwriting is about property or liability exposure, location, construction, operations, values, safety controls, and claims history. The support work differs too. Life files often require medical records, paramed exams, and beneficiary details. P&C files require schedules, loss runs, inspections, and coverage forms. Both depend on accurate data and clear escalation of unusual risks. Question 7. How do you ensure data quality when entering underwriting information into a policy system? The interviewer wants to assess your attention to detail, control mindset, system discipline, and understanding of how bad data impacts rating, compliance, reporting, claims, and customer service. In your answer, talk about source document verification, maker-checker reviews, required fields, naming conventions, audit trails, reconciliation, exception reports, and timely correction of discrepancies. I treat data entry as a control point, not just administration. I would key from approved source documents, validate required fields, compare premium and coverage outputs to the quote, and use checklists for high-risk fields like limits, deductibles, effective dates, class codes, and beneficiaries. If something conflicts, I would not guess. I would document the issue and seek clarification. Accurate data protects rating, policy issuance, claims handling, regulatory reporting, and customer experience. Question 8. What would you do if a broker is pushing for a same-day quote, but the submission is incomplete? This question evaluates your judgment under pressure, communication skills, service orientation, risk awareness, and ability to balance commercial urgency with underwriting discipline. Be sure to mention acknowledging urgency, identifying minimum required information, separating critical from nice-to-have items, documenting communication, and escalating if authority or timing issues arise. I would respond quickly and professionally, but I would not bypass required underwriting controls. I would identify the missing items, explain which are essential for a quote, and ask for them in a clear priority list. If the underwriter can provide an indication based on limited information, I would label it appropriately and document conditions. For a firm quote or binder, I would make sure required information and approvals are in place before proceeding. Question 9. How do endorsements affect insurance operations after a policy has been issued? The interviewer is testing your understanding of post-bind policy servicing, premium adjustments, coverage changes, audit trails, billing impacts, and coordination between underwriting, policy administration, and customers. While answering, focus on receiving change requests, validating underwriting approval, processing effective dates, calculating additional or return premium, issuing documents, and updating downstream systems. Endorsements change the policy after issuance, so they must be controlled carefully. I would confirm the requested change, check whether underwriting approval is needed, validate the effective date, process the system update, and review any premium impact. In P&C, an endorsement could add a vehicle, location, or insured. In life, it might change ownership, beneficiary, or payment mode. The key is matching documentation, system records, billing, and issued forms. Question 10. What compliance issues should underwriting support be alert to? The interviewer wants to assess whether you understand operational compliance risks, including licensing, privacy, sanction screening, fair underwriting, documentation standards, and regulatory timing requirements. Make sure to cover producer licensing, AML or sanctions checks where applicable, privacy of medical and personal data, adverse action documentation, rate filings, and audit-ready records. Underwriting support must protect both the customer and the carrier. I would be alert to producer licensing, privacy rules, sanctions or watch list screening where required, proper handling of medical information, and fair underwriting documentation. In P&C, filed rates and approved forms matter. In life, medical data confidentiality is especially sensitive. I would also ensure declinations, cancellations, and non-renewals follow required notices and timelines. Question 11. What are common life insurance underwriting requirements, and why are they ordered? This question evaluates your knowledge of life underwriting evidence, how support staff coordinate requirements, and how medical, financial, and identity information supports mortality risk assessment. In your answer, talk about applications, paramed exams, attending physician statements, prescription checks, MIB reports, financial justification, identity verification, and tracking outstanding requirements. Life underwriting requirements help the carrier confirm mortality risk and financial justification. Depending on age, face amount, and disclosures, I may need to order a paramed exam, labs, attending physician statement, prescription history, MIB report, motor vehicle report, or financial documents. My role would be to order requirements accurately, track status, follow up with vendors or agents, and keep the file organized so the underwriter can make a timely, well-supported decision. Question 12. How would you support catastrophe exposure management in P&C insurance? The interviewer is testing your understanding of accumulation risk, catastrophe-prone locations, data capture, geocoding, limits aggregation, and why exposure quality matters to underwriting and reinsurance. Be sure to mention accurate location data, construction details, insured values, occupancy, distance to coast, flood or wildfire zones, CAT modeling inputs, and referral thresholds. Catastrophe exposure management depends on clean location and value data. I would ensure addresses are complete, geocoded if required, and supported by accurate construction, occupancy, protection, and insured value details. For property risks, small address errors can distort wind, flood, earthquake, or wildfire exposure. I would also help identify referrals when limits exceed thresholds or aggregate exposure is high. Good exposure data supports pricing, capacity decisions, and reinsurance analysis. Question 13. How do renewals differ from new business from an underwriting support perspective? This question evaluates your understanding of life cycle operations, renewal timelines, exposure changes, updated claims experience, retention priorities, and how renewal support enables proactive underwriting decisions. While answering, focus on diary management, updated applications, loss runs, exposure changes, premium comparison, non-renewal deadlines, conditional renewals, and broker communication. Renewals start with an existing policy, so the focus is on what changed and whether the account still fits appetite. I would manage renewal diaries, request updated exposure information, obtain current loss runs, compare expiring terms to proposed terms, and flag material changes. Timing is critical because non-renewal or conditional renewal notices may have regulatory deadlines. A strong renewal process helps the underwriter retain good business while addressing deteriorating experience early. Question 14. What operational metrics would you track in an underwriting support team? The interviewer wants to assess whether you think like an operations professional, using metrics to manage productivity, service quality, backlog, accuracy, and process improvement. Make sure to cover turnaround time, submission volumes, pending requirements, quote-to-bind ratio, policy issuance timeliness, error rates, rework, backlog aging, and service level compliance. I would track both speed and quality. Key metrics include submission intake volume, turnaround time to quote, pending requirement aging, bind to issue time, endorsement processing time, backlog aging, and service level compliance. I would also track error rates, rework causes, and premium or coverage corrections after issuance. Volume alone can be misleading. A team can be fast but inaccurate. The best metrics show where bottlenecks occur and where controls need improvement. Question 15. Tell me about a time or approach you would use to handle conflicting priorities in insurance operations. This question evaluates your prioritization, stakeholder management, resilience, and ability to handle competing submissions, renewals, endorsements, audits, and urgent customer or broker requests. In your answer, talk about ranking by effective date, regulatory deadline, revenue impact, customer urgency, complexity, and escalation. Show communication rather than silent backlog management. I would prioritize using risk, deadline, and business impact rather than who is loudest. Same-day effective dates, regulatory notices, bind requests, and customer impacting errors come first. I would then manage renewals, endorsements, and routine submissions based on service standards and complexity. If capacity is tight, I would communicate early, reset expectations, and escalate true conflicts. In operations, good prioritization is visible. Stakeholders should know what is happening, why, and by when. If you are still with us, congratulations. You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.